Well, hello there, motherfuckers, and welcome to a long-awaited retro review. And today we're going to be looking at Ground Zero pay-per-view from 1997. So this was the first ever 3-hour in-your-house pay-per-view. And what was that? What was an in-your-house? It was basically like, think about Backlash or Judgment Day or No Mercy or Armageddon. Basically a show that wasn't the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, or WrestleMania or King of the Ring. It wasn't one of these yearly things. Usually every year there would be a different named pay-per-view. Like one year there was Beware of Dog, for example. Another in your house was Mind Games. So there would be like a different subtitle, a different in your house. And these were usually 2 hours long. They would just, it was just like a B pay-per-view, a pay-per-view that, wasn't going to be as big as a major one. So, you see Stone Cold is on the poster for this one, but he actually would not be featured on the pay-per-view in a match. He would be involved in the segment. You see, at SummerSlam, this Stone Cold just a month earlier got temporarily paralyzed when Owen Hart pile drove him at SummerSlam in an Intercontinental title match. So this is a pretty historic moment. This is when they started considering banning the pile driver, and they would end up banning that move. It was considered to be a dangerous move. Stone Cold was almost permanently paralyzed during this match. He got a really bad stinger, and he would take a few months off to recover. And they wrote it into the storylines that he would be temporarily suspended from in-ring action. Funny how there's a lot of moves that you could deem are more dangerous than the pile driver, and moves that have frequently injured more people than the pile driver, such as Seth Rollins' buckle bomb.
Oh, my buckle bomb doesn't injure anybody. No, it's perfectly safe.
So it's funny to look at how one move like the pile driver is considered, and it probably was. I believe that was also the reason why Paul Orndorff also had to retire. So pile driver for many years, and you also had the whole Andy Kaufman incident with the pile driver, but that was most likely a work. So you got to look at it like the pile driver was deemed dangerous and probably was disappointing for a lot of people, but it definitely was a move that pretty much deserved the ban. It was a move that didn't need to be performed, and we would see that WWE would get along just fine without the move. They would go on to one of the most popular periods, the Attitude Era, with 1998 with a big upswing in the ratings, so it didn't matter if people were getting dropped on their heads or not. So let's get into the actual meat of the pay-per-view. We started off with a match between Brian Pillman and Goldust. It's kind of weird watching this, that Brian Pillman would actually be passing away in a month's time. This was a pay-per-view that was held in September. He would pass away the day of Bad Blood, which would be the next pay-per-view in line. I'll be sure to do a review on that show as well, because I'm watching from like mid-1997, and I've been watching these pay-per-views, and right now I'm watching One Night Only. I think I also mentioned that in my Raw review. So I'll be taking a look at all those shows, but this was the first type of match where it felt like it was a gimmick, and we were starting to head towards the Attitude Era. Even though they didn't acknowledge this as the Attitude Era at the time, I still consider it to be part of it. It was definitely, Vince Russo was on the writing team. He was not sure if he was quite the head writer just yet, but he was on creative. You could definitely see that he was having a great effect on the writing. It was definitely a dark, stipulation that they put in place. If Brian Pillman won the match, he would get Terry Reynolds' services for 30 days. She'd have to live with him. They were to be 24 hours. If he lost, he would leave the WWF forever. And up to this point, he had been wearing a dress. He had been humiliated because at SummerSlam, Goldust beat him. And the stipulation of that match was he had to wear a dress. And Sergeant Slaughter, who was the commissioner at the time, said that he couldn't take the dress off until he won a match. Well, he won a match here and he drags Terry Reynolds away after it. He cheated to win. That was a real heel right there. This is the thing what I don't get. WWE has this on the network. Look at the difference between a heel like Brian Pillman and like how they try to do heels nowadays. Like, you cheat to win. It was rare actually when a heel would like win a match like with their finisher. We don't even see that enough from The Miz, for example. There's plenty of matches where he just wins with the skull-crushing finale. Like, Brian Pillman, I believe, like, when he was in the WWE, his finisher was a DDT. But he would cheat so many times, it would be rare when you would see a match end that way, because he was a heel and he was going to cheat to get the victory. So this was definitely a nice way to open the show. Definitely set a dark tone for the night. It was also funny hearing Jerry the King Lawler getting in some like dark jokes about what Brian Pillman was going to be doing to Terry, and you could definitely feel on this show that the Attitude Era was setting in. Like, this wasn't the happy-go-lucky, kid-centric WWE anymore. They were definitely headed towards a more adult way of doing things. It felt more like a drama, definitely like a prime-time show. Then you had Brian Christopher defeating Scott Putski by countout. This was pretty disturbing. And really talks volumes about today's style and the high flying and the flipping and suicide dives every 2 seconds. Scott Putski does a plancha. He misses. He lands on the floor and his leg is all discontorted and everything. I don't think this moment gets enough attention. We all talk about Sid Vicious and his moment in WCW with his leg going out of complete alignment. But this probably wasn't as graphic, but you still see Scott Putski's, his knee is like bulging out like of his kneecap. It's pretty disturbing to look at, but the match just ends on a count out. Brian Christopher looked like a giant heel. He's laughing at Scott Putski. I think the thing is that why Brian Christopher really didn't get over so much as they probably thought he was going to is probably because of the roster just being too big. Because I guarantee you today, well, they'd probably misuse him even more today, but he probably would stand out even more. That laugh that he had, the fact that he was Jerry the King Lawler's son, I was a bit surprised that he wasn't getting more attention based off of that. But, I guess at least it wasn't like just because you're somebody's son, you're guaranteed to, get a big spot. So, it was the light heavyweight division, and you could really see that, like, even at this point, the light heavyweight division wasn't garnering as much steam as the WCW Cruiserweight division. They just didn't have the names. I mean, Scott Putski was Ivan Putski's son, and leading up to this match, they did do a fun tag match on an episode of Raw where it was actually Brian Christopher teaming up with the King against Scott and Ivan. So it was fun to have those father-son tag teams. I wish we could get to see more of that. That's kind of something that they were going to go for. If Davey Boy Smith didn't pass away, he was going to tag team with David Hart Smith. So, it's rare that you see that type of stuff. So, it's too bad. Scott Putski's career, I don't know where it really would have went. He went to WCW after this, and he just kind of floundered. He just, didn't go anywhere. And that's a shame. I mean, this guy had a lot of athletic ability, and he had a pretty impressive physique. But, I like Brian Christopher a lot. Sadly, he passed away earlier this year. But he definitely always knew how to get a reaction from the crowd. He was over to a point, but I think at this point when you had people that were super over, like Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Stone Cold, it just wasn't enough. So, he just kind of fell short of where he needed to be during this time period. Savio Vega defeated Farouk and Crush in a triple threat match. This was a very long match, but I kind of enjoyed it. These were three tough guys going at it. I felt like these were also three guys that, never really felt like they got where they really wanted to go in the WWE. I really enjoyed the gang warfare storyline where they had Los Boricuas, the DOA, which was Crush, Chains, and Skull and 8-Ball, who were the Harris brothers, and the Nation of Domination. I mean, all of these members, they were all tough guys that all looked tough. And it was, it was a pretty cool storyline. These guys were fighting each other out in parking lots and stuff. And they're really good episodes of Raw, good segments. You should go check them out. So they put them all in a triple threat match. They barred all the other members for ringside. It was a pretty good match. And Savio hits a spinning heel kick, ends the match. See, that's what I like to see, like a move like that, like just spinning heel kick, which kind of looks like elementary nowadays because they've upped the ante so much with other moves. When Savio Vega did that, it did look like a match ender, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's just when certain people do certain moves in a certain way, and they didn't oversaturate the match with a whole bunch of different moves. So when someone hits a move like that, it stands out, and it does look like a finisher. See, that's the thing. These guys have screwed themselves up so much by putting in like 50 different moves in the match. It's like you might look at like, oh, the more moves in the match, the better it is. Actually, the worse it is. And you could see that because you don't even remember half these matches. But when you kind of think back to the matches that are considered to be the best of all time, and you count the number of moves and the time between the transitions to other moves, usually some of the widely regarded best matches of all time probably have the fewest moves in them. Like, think about Stone Cold and Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. We didn't have all these different moves during that match, but for some reason, that match and the drama involved and the psychology within it, it's one of the best matches of all time. So you kind of have to think about that. I'm sure I could show a match like this to somebody nowadays that likes today's style, loves today's style. It's like Dave Meltzer and praises it, to the moon, and back, saying that it's the best time period in wrestling. But that's just not the case. When you look at a match like this, I see like this being a pretty good match. I mean, just guys beating the shit out of each other. It did go on a little bit on the long side, a little bit too long. There was just so much breaking up, and even the announcer at one point said, oh, this could go on all night at this point. And they're like, well, yeah, it is pretty long. So they could have shortened this one up a bit. But I enjoyed it for what it is. Max Mini defeated El Torito. And no, this is not the El Torito that was with the, what were they called again? The Los Matadores, Primo and Epico. So, this El Torito unfortunately had passed away. It was also a much bigger El Torito. This guy was pretty heavy. I really enjoyed this match. Not only was it hilarious, I mean, first of all, I should admit that they're midgets. Max Mini at this time was a super over midget. They tried to do some midget wrestling, and I think for the most part it was pretty successful. It sounded like the crowd was really into it. One of the best part, the highlight of this match, and even Vince McMahon on commentary even says highlight, and he was right. Max Mini jumps into the King's lap, takes his crown. I think that is I think it's an underrated moment right there. I think that's fucking hilarious. You got to see the King's reaction. I mean, that's the other thing, guys. Listen to the commentary here. Not only was Vince McMahon really good on commentary, but the King and JR. I mean, I don't even think that JR really hit the epitome of his commentary. I think once they made it the King and JR really started to shine as being the best commentator of all time, which I still hold true to this day. I still believe he's the best commentator ever. But you could just hear like the commentary, just the level of excitement, getting these wrestlers over. Nobody does that like this today. Not even close. I mean, you compare Michael Cole to even Vince McMahon. Like, I think that maybe Vince McMahon should just go out there and call the matches nowadays himself. I mean, instead of screaming in people's ear, I'm surprised Vince McMahon with his type of attitude, he doesn't just say, let me do it myself. So this was a fun match. Max Mini ends up winning. El Torito, I think at one point he gores the ref in the ass. I think this was hilarious. They tried to do this again, I think, like late 2005, really early 2006 on SmackDown with the Juniors division, but it never gained any headway or any steam. But this Juniors division was actually really over at this point. I think they were still calling it the Juniors division, but it really, it was over with the crowd. You could definitely hear the people were enjoying themselves, especially when Max jumped into the King's lap. I mean, that made Max over. That was pretty fucking funny. The Headbangers defeated the Godwins, LOD, and Owen Hart and the Bulldog in a fatal 4-way elimination tag match to win the tag titles. Prior to this, Stone Cold stunned JR. Him and Dude Love had to give up their tag titles due to his injury. Dude Love says it wouldn't be right to defend the titles on his own, so he gives up his belt. Stone Cold gave up the belt, and the stunner was, that was a great moment right there. He was stunning everybody in the company at this point. It was a build-up. JR, then he would stun Slaughter, then the King, and then it would lead up to Vince McMahon later on. And so, I like how they built that up, that he was stunning all the officials and until he worked his way up to Vince McMahon. So this was another pretty good match. It was pretty surprising that they put the Headbangers over when, you have teams like Bulldog and Owen, the LOD, and also the Godwins, just gigantic guys, these big, thick dudes. And, the Headbangers definitely had a size disadvantage, but they wanted to try something new. You could see the commentators were really getting behind the Headbangers, and they wanted to get them over as a big babyface tag team. I don't think they really were as over as they, were perceiving them to be on commentary. They definitely were getting cheers. They definitely got a decent reaction. And compared to today, I mean, they're getting just about as good of a reaction as AJ Styles or anybody like that. But I don't think that they were really like the most popular tag team, as they were saying. I think like even the LOD were getting a bigger reaction. But, fun match. A lot was going on. And, a lot of different rivalries involved here, especially with the LOD and the Godwins. So, another good match on the card. Bret Hart defeated the Patriot. This was an excellent match. The Patriot is definitely, what's his real name? Dan Wilkes, I believe it is. You wouldn't think like a guy wearing a mask or anything, but this guy was getting over with the crowd. Coming out, he had Kurt Angle's music, and this would eventually become Kurt Angle's theme. He definitely had some good ring skills. This guy was a good wrestler with a pretty decent moveset. And he was working really good with Bret Hart here. A good 20-minute match. And, definitely they were hitting different things. They were gelling pretty well in this match. And it's funny, it's I think I've looked at some reviews from some smarky sites, and they said that this was a disappointing match. No, this was actually pretty good. The Patriot ends up passing out in the sharpshooter. Really good match. I mean, I really enjoyed this one. I thought that this was excellent. I think it was the best match on the card, really. Which would lead to the next match. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker fighting to a no contest. This was a perfect lead into the Hell in a Cell match at the next pay-per-view, which would be Bad Blood. The Undertaker is knocking out referees. They're fighting all over the place. The Undertaker is smashing them down on the entrance ramp. They were fighting all over the place. Rick Rude's coming out, gives Shawn Michaels the brass knuckles. He bashes him in the face with that, and I think he ends up hitting him or something like that. Whatever it is, Triple H is coming out for interference, and it was a crazy Unchained match. Perfect lead-in, so... Of course, with the Hell in the Cell to keep everybody out because there was so much shenanigans during the match. Overall, what an excellent card this was. From start to finish, just a really impressive pay-per-view with a lot going on, a lot of good matches from start to finish, feeling very eventful, and capping it off with a wild main event, an excellent wrestling match with Bret Hart and the Patriot. I mean, the card had it all. You know, not only, you know, you had the great story with Pillman and Goldust, and, you know, great commentary going on. The announcers were really into the show. The moment with Stone Cold stunning JR. I mean, great pay-per-view overall. I mean, they put a lot into it. I mean, and this is what I'm saying. This was only think about this. There was more effort put into this show than this year's WrestleMania currently. And this was just a B pay-per-view. This was just a pay-per-view right after SummerSlam. This was a pay-per-view just to get them to Bad Blood so they could do the Hell in a Cell match. Just a pay-per-view, you know, right before Survivor Series. So it was like a bridging pay-per-view, but they treated it like, you know, they put a lot of effort. They booked this to be good. They put a lot of good matches on it, and, you know, you might have had a non-finish in the main event, but it was satisfying because it was a war. You understood why there wasn't a finish to it. So, really good pay-per-view. I really enjoyed watching this one. I actually never watched this pay-per-view before, which was another thing. It's the pay-per-view that I just never got around to looking at. So it was good to really have a chance. You know, I'm way more familiar with 1998. I could probably tell you everything from start to finish that happened in 1998. But 1997, this is kind of when I was really just starting to get into wrestling, and I was watching WCW at the time. So this is not really built into my brain as much as 1998 and 99 and 2000. So, you know, great pay-per-view. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it on the network. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this retro review. If you want to see more of these, you know, please, you know, in the past I've done some of these, but I noticed that a lot of people don't really seem to watch them all that much, probably because, you know, a more current show is going to get more attention. You would think that a better show would, but you've probably already know what's happened on these shows. That's probably why no one's, you know, going to tune in as much as like a current Raw or SmackDown review. But anyway, if you enjoy what you've seen here and you never seen me before, subscribe here. If you've already subscribed, make sure that you're still subscribed, because YouTube likes to screw over a lot of people on here and just magically unsubscribe people. So make sure that YouTube hasn't, you know, committed that crime against you of robbing you of my videos. Click the bell so you do get the notifications when I do post a new video. Also, check out some of the other videos I have posted here. And guys, I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what you thought. If you want to see more of these, this has been your YWC champ, and I'm signing out.